Three, two, one. Welcome back to the Chef JKP podcast, and today we've got an incredible treat for you. We have got the executive chef, Shane Bourne. He's also the co-founder of the Dubai Chefs Collective. Shane, a very warm welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me, James.
So, we're going to get straight into your story. You have a really, really incredible one to tell. Born in Botswana, and then working and living all the way here in Dubai. Please tell us about that culinary journey so far.
Well, it was a bit of an interesting one. I was lucky enough to grow up in a family that traveled the world quite a bit. But starting off at the time, my dad was working for South African breweries and was posted in Botswana, which was where I was born. Spent the first few years of my life, and then we moved on to Johannesburg. Through that, we then moved to Alain, so 135 k's inland from Dubai. We were there for a while. My dad was working for Coca-Cola. We went to Vietnam, we went to China, we went to Thailand, and then eventually came back to Dubai. But through the whole process of it, it was quite cool because my mom is somewhat of a chef herself. She was never a professional chef, but spent a lot of time doing it, and we ended up running a business together later on. But through that, she always had her massive love of food, and we always ate well at home. And she always encouraged us to be part of the cooking at home in the kitchen, learning about different things as we went along. So as we went from country to country, you obviously come across different food cultures, different spices, different dishes, different ways of cooking, and different techniques. And I think it kind of took me in a direction to being a little bit Asian orientated in the way my own flavor profile sits, especially with Thailand and Vietnam, where you've got your four pillars of cooking, and your salty, your sweet, your spicy, and your sour. And I kind of through that found a way to balance out all your dishes. You've got your different elements that all come through, and through that you've got a good combination for basis for any dish. But as we traveled around, as I said, my mom was a bit of a chef. We went to cooking schools together. So we've been to Chiang Mai, we've been in Phuket, Koh Samui, we've been to a couple of places in Vietnam. Um, and also with that, at the same time, one of my mom's best friends, and actually someone who's my mentor, is a lady called Shirley Guy out of South Africa. She was old school French cordon bleu trained in Paris in, don't want to say too long ago, otherwise she's going to shoot me. I think in the 50s, 60s, when it was definitely a hard time to be a female chef in Paris, and she bossed her way through Paris and then into London, and then successfully went back to South Africa, where she started up a cooking school that got to be quite famous. And her and my mom have been best friends since before I was born. So they always planned not your normal holiday, but like food holidays, where they'll go pick a cooking school here, they go to Italy, they go to Thailand, they go to Vietnam, they go all around the world, Malaysia, you name it. And because they had that process, they kind of brought me into that world, brought my brother into that world, and my dad just tagged along because it was good food. Um, so I was very lucky in terms of that that thought process, that food process. It was not something that was driven into me, but it was given to me with open arms and wholeheartedly. It was something that I could latch onto and learn from. Um, and it was a very cool experience, to be honest. I don't think there's anyone better you can learn your love of food from than your family. And I'll always say that. I'll always be forever grateful to my mom for that. But also at the same time instilling the idea that when you have dinner at home, you sit down at the table. You don't sit in front of the TV. You don't have, but like dinner's properly cooked, and also you've got your protein or your veg and or carb or whatnot. And if your plate isn't cleaned, you little ungrateful bugger, you're going to get a slap around the ears until your plate's empty. And that also teaches you to appreciate the food. If someone spent the time and love and effort to cook you something, and they think, okay, cool, and you sit there and you turn your nose up at it, it is not only spiteful, but it also shows a slight lack of contempt for what someone else has created for you. And I think that translates a bit further on into my career, is that I can take criticism quite well, but it still bites you. You still get a bit angry about it. But if you understand that point of view, that someone's put a whole lot of love into the food. They care. It's their livelihood. It's what they think about. It's what they dream about. It's what they think about. And if they've done something wrong to like for you not to be happy with what they're serving, um, they've got to go back in. Where did I go wrong? Am I using the wrong technique? Is all my ingredients wrong? Say what happened? Do I have one of my chefs to blame? Etc. Etc. But if you can have that appreciation from food from early on in your life, um, it helps you better when you're going further forward. But also, you understand the fact that so many people in the world also don't have that opportunity. Um, and as I said, coming from Africa, I mean that's it's rife. You see that going all the way forward. In Asia and everywhere you've been, you also have your poverty, your people who don't get their 3 square meals a day. But once a week, they have that family meal. Might be big, might be small, but it's when family comes together, and that's what food does. It brings people together, makes people happy, um, no matter what culture. I've lived all around the world. I've been in America, I've been in Australia. As I said, I've been in all the Asian countries. I've been here in the Middle East. Um, and whether it's Sunday or Friday or whichever day of the week it is, um, food plays the all important role of family time of bringing people together, the happier moments in your life. And I was very fortunate that my family gave me many of those.
And having travelled to all of these countries extensively, do you think that really helped you to develop the style of your cuisine?
Yeah, I think so because I mean, I would hate to use the word fusion because I mean everybody does these days, but it really is a mix of everything. I've got my very traditional South African roots where man make fire, man cook meat, man eat meat. Um, but with that in South Africa, you've got massive heritage going all the way back through the early days when people first started trading through the Cape. You had all the Malaysians, the Malay spices, and all of that. Then in Durban, you've got the biggest Indian population outside of India. So you've got spice markets like you cannot believe, but also their own flavor profiles. Like a lot of people around the world would have heard of a Durban curry before. It's not too different to another curry, but it does have its own distinctive flavors. So when you start learning more about that, and as you go along, you think, oh, I can do this, I can do that. There's certain things that add together. And then you go over to somewhere like Thailand, where it's all about the fresher produce. It's all about your green papaya salads and your sometimes and your fresh chilies and your fresh limes and your coconut milks and all the different stuff like that. It's a very different style of food in the fact that you'd actually do a little bit less cooking and a little bit more prep work. Um, but it's also lighter on the digestive system. You don't come out of it feeling like you've eaten a whole animal and need to go to sleep. Like it's a bit more refreshing. And then you go to China, which I mean, where do you start with China? It's one of the oldest food traditions in the world, um, and it's as far away from what people think of Chinese food as possible. Like, okay, yeah, people think Peking duck, they see the Peking ducks hanging in the window, and that does exist, but the rest of Chinese food is far, far removed from what most of the world knows. And it's also steeped in tradition because a lot of China is frozen for most of the years. Winters are super, super, super cold. Um, so they subsistence farm, and what they have left over, they keep for the winter months, and that's when soups get incredibly important because you've only got so much spring onion for this time being. You've got to make a base for your soup broth and keep building it, kind of like you do with the moly that you can keep cooking and keep cooking. Um, and then that also changes your mindset of, oh man, these guys have got a completely different setup for food because they have to make it last through a certain period of time where things aren't actually available. Um, so you've gone from a place of abundance in South Africa where beef and wild game, it's widely available and it's everywhere, to a place in Thailand where your fresher produce is there, to a place like China where 5 months of the year you can't get anything fresh in certain places of the country because it's just too cold, stuff's frozen, snowed in, etc., etc. So it completely warps the way you think about your food. Um, and then you come back through Australia, which is very similar to the South African culture in terms of the way they eat, what they eat, how they eat, all the way to America where gluttony is king. Um, but also you've got your special parts of American food, so the traditions, everything you learn about it as you go along. Um, and when you combine all of that together, what I've learned over the years, you get one hell of a mix of, I don't even know how to describe it. Whereas for me at home, we prefer to eat quite Asian orientated food. I'll eat a lot more rice than I would do pasta, etc., etc. And I think that comes out in my food.
And now that you're executive chef over here in Dubai, tell us a little bit about Biddy Bondo and what you're doing, because I know that you've just launched a new menu, and these flavors that you've just discussed sound like they're sort of sneaked in there. Is that correct?
Yeah, so for most of you who won't know this, but Biddy Bondi is a very, I think, traditionally styled Australian sports bar based on the Palm in Dubai. It's been around for quite a long time, and I took over the kitchen last year. And when I got to the menu, there were a couple of things where I was like, yeah, if you touch those, you're going to get shot. And they are your staple Australian things, but also stuff that the locals had come to love. So, for example, you have your chicken parmigiano, which in chicken palmy, as the Aussies call it. If you don't have that in a pub in Australia, people don't go to your pub. That's one of those type of things. But then, funny enough, one of the biggest sellers on the menu for a long time has been a Thai green curry. Um, and is as far away removed from traditional Thai green curry as you can get. So when I went and I was like, okay, cool, I'm going to make my green curry. And it was so different that they said, no, don't actually change it because the customers are going to be pissed off about it. They said, not because yours is bad, not because this one's bad, da 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 da. They said, just because that's one of those staple things that if you change, like going to McDonald's and getting rid of the Big Mac, people are not going to be happy about it. But then I started looking through the rest of the menu and different type of flavor profiles. Like for example, going back to my South African roots with, as I said, the Malaysian spices, I've got a bobotie spring roll, which bobotie is like a Malay curried beef mince that's traditionally served baked with an egg custard on the top, and I've put it into a spring roll, paired it up with a very famous South African chutney. Um, and I stuck that in an Australian sports bar, and it has sold quite well. And there were a few other things that I played around with when we did that, and then now when I've started introducing a whole bunch of the new ones, like if you look, I've got a garlic caper butter wing on the menu, which is very French, Italian, and thought process, but it's still a fried chicken wing, which you can debate whether you want to go American or Korean or Japanese, or whoever wants to claim the wing first. But then we also have a Korean wing, which yeah, it is picking up in popularity, and it's becoming one of those type of things. But if you actually go through and understand what you're using to make that sauce, you're going into another heritage of food. If you're not just buying, I mean, we make everything in house. There's none of our sauces are bought, etc., etc. And that's a completely different avenue of food you're going down. Somewhere that I haven't been yet, but fortunately I have a sous chef who's worked with a bunch of Korean chefs, and he goes, "Chef, what do you think? Taste this." And I was like, "Okay, Dan, we're not arguing about this." And then I've just managed to source some barramundi. For those of you that don't know, it's a saltwater fish that's found in the the mangrove areas in and around Northern Australia, and a bit further east. Um, very very nice flaky white fish, and I found it on the market here, and I was like, oh, hold on, why am I serving Atlantic cod when I can get barramundi Australian bar? And also bringing a bit of the Australian back into the equation, and actually, I think offering a much better product. What else are we got? I did a barbecue short rib, also it's gone straight back to Asia. Star anise, that kind of traditional Chinese braising liquid, followed with a cast off of an American Korean barbecue sauce. But it's there you got your mashed potatoes, and then boom, straight back to Thailand. I brought my bok choy in. So it is a big mix of everything that I've learned as I go along, and I keep going that way.
And you talk about bringing people together and food bringing people together. Now, you have actually founded something really, really incredible called the Dubai Chefs Collective. Please tell us all about that.
Well, it was an interesting one for me because I somewhat always felt like a bit of an outsider in terms of the food, like chef side of things in Dubai. I was running a an entertainment based cooking school and a catering company, and I know a lot of restaurant chefs look at catering chefs and like, ugh, what's that? But I was sitting there one night and I was like, I've just done a cookbook with, I know James was in it and quite a few of the other Dubai chefs were in it. I was like, why have we not actually sat down and had a couple beers or had a chat with each other to find out more about the other chefs? Like, yeah, okay, we are continuously in competition, but it's a healthy competition and we feed off of each other anyway. But there are not many other people who are around who have the same mindset that we do in terms of the way we work and the hours we operate and the way we think through things. what Why wouldn't you set up some type of platform for all of the chefs to come together, share ideas, get ideas? If someone's looking for a specific product that they can't get from one of their suppliers, someone else might not know, someone else might know, might be able to get a special, hear about new techniques, different things like, and then also bring each other together. We've done a couple things now where a few of the chefs have done a couple cooking things together. One being a competition, one was us actually all just cooking together, which is absolutely awesome because we've all got different stories to tell, different ideas, different things, and getting together is key. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's a cutthroat business, but I only want to get better. So I can achieve more than the guy next to me, and you help each other and you build and you do all of those stuff. It's a healthy competition to work together, but also you're like-minded individuals. Why wouldn't you want to help each other and talk to each other and grow together? And that doesn't really exist.
And I think the really cool thing about the whole Dubai Chefs Collective is that the fact that there's no ego.
Yeah, I found that was quite when we did the first cooking thing we did. I found it quite interesting is that we kind of just threw the menu together on WhatsApp here and there, a couple ideas, this, that, and okay, cool, grocery shopping's done. Um, and we went in and we were like, okay, cool, this is the menu, but how are we going to do it? We didn't have recipes, we didn't have anything like that. And someone would throw an idea forward and be like, and we're like, yeah, cool, we like that one. Or we did, and we did the whole day the same way. And there was good laughs along the way. Like there was good banter. At one point, we actually couldn't do anything because we were laughing so much. And everyone just checked all the rubbish at the door. We were there for the same reason, just to get along and cook and have some fun. Um, and I've also seen that come out in just the general communication between everyone, that it's not even selfish in terms of you scratch my back, I scratch your back type things. People are just genuinely happy to be talking to each other and helping each other, which also you don't see that much of.
And I think that's the other point I was going to come on to. Obviously, with COVID-19 coming along and changing the world and changing hospitality in itself, how have the chefs actually supported each other during this time in the Dubai Chefs Collective?
Well, I mean, a perfect example of one of the biggest discussions to come out of COVID-19 has been how are you going to keep some money coming into the business? I mean, as we all know, everyone straight away looked at delivery. But delivery has all of its own pitfalls as you go along. And from a chef's point of view, you sit there and you're going, can my food travel so far? Can that box, is it going to look nice on the other end? But the actual reality of it, it's not so much about that. It's about the delivery services, your ordering platforms, your delivery systems, etc., etc., etc. And as there's in Dubai, I don't know about the rest of the world as much as we've had the debate about it. You've had a few companies absolutely rinsing it for years and years and years and years, and now people started to fight back, and there's been huge debates and arguments about it. But in the group, there's been a lot of conversation about what systems are you using, what delivery companies are you using, what riders are you using, which has been more beneficial to you? Do you have bad experiences? Da 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 da. Which you normally wouldn't really get to bounce off too many people other than the people you work with, which has been quite nice. But at this also, and then another thing that's been done is a lot of guys have hit the sourdough train. We know it's become a bit of a bit of a thing worldwide, but there's massive conversation about starters and oh, well, you doing this? Are you doing that? Can you dry your bread this way or not? And it's a healthy conversation. It's not everyone's just showing genuine interest.
I think it's amazing. At the same time, you're sharing recipes, you're sharing ideas, you're laughing, you're joking, and it's a real community. And it's something that should have been done a long, long time ago. I had a discussion recently with Simon Ritchie, the caterer of the Middle East, and he said the editor of the Caterer Middle East, and he said it's amazing that the chefs can do it in Dubai, but he would never see that happening in somewhere like London or New York or somewhere like that, due to the fact that there are so many chefs keeping things so tight. The community necessarily isn't there, and there's far more competition considering with Michelin and all of these sorts of things. But I have to say, within the Dubai community, everybody has been super helpful and very, very nice.
It has been very cool, but you know what? I reckon if you gave it a fair shot in those places, it would actually end up working. Like, you think about like one of my favorite people, and I know we're going to be talking about this, but later is Anthony Bourdain, um, and he was all about spending as much time with other chefs as possible, learning from them, understanding them, seeing what they're doing, learning. And if you gave it a chance to bite, I think chefs would bite because it is a quiet brotherhood slash fraternity, um, or club as you want to call it. Because as I said, let's not be exclusive on the male side here. Some of the female chefs around are kicking our butts. So, but it is there to be done. It's just whether people are willing to accept it and check the egos at the door.
Absolutely. So you're talking about Anthony Bourdain, who is an absolute legend. Let's talk about your three culinary heroes.
Well, I mean, I'll go through quite a list of all of them, but I'd be remiss to not say my mother is my first person. She taught me my love of food. I still call her up, Mom, how do I make this one? We've done a whole, we did our company together for many years. We had each other's backs when things were tough. Um, and it's such a cool relationship now that, as obviously one of my favorite people in the world, being my mother, is also someone who I can share what I do for work with, um, and call her up and be like, "Hey, Mom, listen, I've completely ruined this cheesecake. Do you have a quick fix or anything like that?" And 9 times out of 10, she'll be like, "Yeah, got you," and that's absolutely awesome. To build on that, we can go to Anthony Bourdain, who is, I think, in general, 90% of chefs you would ever talk to would throw his name in the ring. Um, One, because after writing Kitchen Confidential, he just kind of highlighted exactly what the world of a chef is like, with no holds barred. Who are you? I don't care who you are. Why can't you do this? Shut up and just do it. And the whole, if you didn't like it, you don't belong here. If you if you do like it, you're in love with it, and that's where you're going to be for the rest of your life. And he very much lived kind of life to the extreme in a way, but he was always in a hunt of perfection to an extent, but more so in terms of understanding people through food and whatnot. And at the end of the day, as I said, that's what it's all about. And I think he highlighted that and brought that to a lot of people around the world who didn't think about it that way.
Brilliant point. Brilliant point.
And then I'll go to would be one of my favorites, and I just think I enjoy his approach. Once again, it's quite similar to Anthony Bourdain, is David Chang. Um, and his story is really cool because you hear him talking about his childhood, growing up as a Korean kid in New York, and everyone looking at him walking into the canteen at school with his kimchi and being like, "Ew, what's that?" And kind of holding on to that and learning from it and going forward and trying to bring cultures together through food, through this, so many different things he's done. Um, and I mean, to open up one of the first noodle bars in New York and grab a Michelin star for it being a noodle bar, saying something in its own right. But he's also like, I don't know if anyone's been watching some of his Instagram during lockdown, he's the ultimate fat kid, um, which appeals to me massively in terms of he's at home, and he goes, "I feel like noodles. What's good noodles should I make?" And he sits there and he goes through his process. And he takes something incredibly simple and makes something incredibly delicious with about 5 ingredients, and sits there and goes, "Yep, yep, this is the best thing I've ever made. And it's going to go on my new menu." He's just a very approach life instantly, but also through, as I said, I've read quite a lot about him and I follow quite a bit with him. Through his different TV shows, the time he goes and explores the different cultures with food, like the time he spends in China and Japan, and um, he's traveled extensively to learn about different cultures and different techniques and whatnot. Um, and he explains it in a way that everyone can understand. So I've got big love for him.
So, talking of funny stories, everybody who comes to the podcast must tell a funny story. You don't need to name names or name and shame unless you want to. We don't mind here. What do you have for us?
Well, I'm going to go back to an event that I was hosting. So this isn't exactly a kitchen story, though I could see it happening from my outdoor kitchen. I'd been contacted to set up a 7-course tasting dinner in the middle of the desert for 50 people. I don't know if any of you have been out to the desert. It's not the simplest thing to pull off. And you've got to set up generators and do your kitchen and fires and barbecues and tables and all of that. But 99% of the time, people forget that you've got to set up a toilet. Guys can kind of climb over the sand dune and go do whatever they need to behind closed doors, but the girls not so much, especially when they're dressed in black tie. So we set up what I would call a semi-latrine / toilet. There was a toilet tent and we dug a bit of a hole and there was like a portable seat that was wedged there quite nicely. Had some pink flamingos leading up to the bathroom and some tiki torches and everything. And there was one of our guests. She was, we'll say elderly for the sake of being kind, who may or may not have had one too many ports and proceeded to go to the bathroom. And next thing you know, I was there plating some desserts. And the entire tent fell down and there was this elderly lady stuck through the toilet seats in the hole in the ground with everybody watching. And the only thing she goes, you just heard her go, "Can someone please help me?" And we helped her. She goes, "Shit, this is fun. I want to do it again." And I was just standing there shaking my head. I was like, "Oh, this is slightly embarrassing." And at the end of the day, though, no skin off her back. She just took it in her stride, and it was just once again another occasion of people being together by food and an occasion and just enjoying. She was like, "Oh well, that happened."
What a legend! What a legend! And of course, you've travelled. You've really done the circuit in terms of being a chef and understanding different cultures and things like this. Now, again, the pandemic has really opened up the terms of people cooking at home all the time, whether it's bread, whether it's different meals, whatever it may be. What advice would you give to any amateur chefs or younger chefs for that matter?
I'll give it to you from 2 points of view. Um, if you're cooking at home because you enjoy your cooking, or you're not cooking as much because you're a little bit scared of cooking at home, there's nothing wrong with experimenting and messing up. If it's rubbish, you can throw it in the bin. You can be a little bit disappointed, but you're going to learn from it. And 9 times out of 10, that's where most of the chefs start. They start with an idea, and variation 22 is the one that's actually good. So keep at it. I mean, cooking at home is a wonderful thing. My mom always said to my brother and I, "Your father's absolutely useless. He can't even boil the kettle. You will not leave my house before you're 18 without being able to cook 5 dishes that you can impress a girlfriend and her parents." And obviously, I extended way past that, but my brother's also a very capable chef because of this, because what she instilled into how important food is in the house. Always push, always learn. One day you're going to have other people to cook for. And I can tell you what, there's nothing more gratifying than cooking someone a dinner and them sitting there having a little belch saying, "I'm a little belch," and sitting there, "Oh, that was so good, I'm so full." And you bring out dessert and they say, "No, I can't," and then they eat some more. That is the greatest compliment. It's instant gratification for what you're doing. And I would always say, just keep trying. And then for all of those of you who've taken up cooking and I think, "Hey, I could maybe crack it in the kitchen." Think long and hard about that. See if you can do an apprenticeship. See if you can find a kitchen that's not too hectic, because otherwise it's going to be a proper shock to the system. But get in there and go do 4 or 5 days. You're going to get all the bad jobs. You're going to pick the pasta. You're going to peel the garlic. But you'll actually see when service gets going how frantic, how hectic, and also how long your day can be. You can go anywhere from a 4 hour quick hard fire shift to doing a 15 hour, 16 hour slog and being absolutely broken and be ready to come back and do it again the next day. Um, it is not the life for everyone. Like, and saying, "Oh, I love my food's one thing," but you truly, truly have to love your food. You eat, sleep, think everything you do when it comes to food. What's this menu going to be? Have I got my supplies right? Have I da 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 da? Is my pricing okay? Like your brain will go into overdrive if you don't love it, and you will crack. So if you are, see if you can find a space somewhere. Go do a week in a kitchen, and you'll understand very quickly whether you want to or you don't want to.
Perfect advice. Really perfect advice. Now, if people want to contact you, how can they find you?
I've got a few avenues you can go down. There's my personal Instagram handle, which is Chef Shane Bourne. Um, through Dubai Chefs Collective, you can always find me there. And also, if you want to look back a bit at what I used to do and my mom's still kind of running, you can have a look at Bourne's Kitchen. We have an Instagram handle, it's Bourne's Kitchen, or you can go to bourne'skitchen.com. Um, if not, and you are in Dubai, come down to Biddy Bondi, come grab a cold one, grab something to eat. Don't be afraid to shoot a message to the chef. I'm more than willing to come out and talk and maybe send you something special at the kitchen that day.
Especially the chicken wings or the beef rib. It's incredible. Shane, I just want to recap everything that we've discussed and what a journey you've had from Botswana and all the way to Australia, all of these incredible places. The fact that your mum instilled such an amazing food culture in you from such a young age, bringing people together, the Dubai Chefs Collective, amazing Culinary Heroes, funniest kitchen story, which I really love. I think it's one of the best we've had on here so far. And the advice, and I agree completely with the advice. I think that's what people need to do. Do 15 hours for 5 days and see how you feel after that.
Oh yeah. Your feet are sore, your fingers are burnt. Chef shouted at you, may have had a pan come your way or two, you've cut your fingers, you're sweating, and either you're grinning from ear to ear or you're crying. It's one way or the other.
Exactly, and it doesn't make or break you, but I think the ones who really want to do it will really do it well. So, Shane, I just want to say on behalf of the JKP podcast, thank you so much for coming in today. It has been an absolute pleasure having you on.
No, thank you. It's always nice to be able to talk about what we've gone through and what we've learned and then share it with everyone else. And also to sit here and help you out.
Thank you so much, Chief.
Well, cheers, have a good one.